When you arrive at qualitative research questions, you are continuing the same chain of logic you have followed from the beginning. You started with a phenomenon, something happening in a real context that can be described in human terms. Inside that phenomenon, you identified attention, the part that was not working as intended, not understood, or not explained. You traced the consequence of leaving that tension unresolved, which helped you see why the issue matters at a broader level. Together, those layers revealed the gap, the missing knowledge that the field still needs. Because that missing knowledge could not be expressed numerically, and because the heart of the issue lived in meaning, perception, and experience, the methodology became qualitative. Once the methodology was set, you selected the qualitative design, narrative phenomenology, grounded theory, ethnography, or case study. Only then are you ready to write your qualitative research question, which must match both the methodology and the design named in the purpose statement. A qualitative research question must use the same kind of verb and framing found in the purpose statement, because both must signal the same type of qualitative knowledge the study is designed to produce. Qualitative questions use verbs like explore, understand, describe, interpret, or examine. The verbs aren't interchangeable. Each one signals the type of meaning the study will generate. Because qualitative work is concerned with human experience, these questions never ask about variables. They do not use language like impact, influence, effect, or contribute because those imply causal or statistical relationships that belong to quantitative methods. Qualitative questions remain open and non-directional. They do not predict what participants will say, nor do they imply that one experience leads to another. Instead, they create space for participants to reveal meaning in their own terms. Your own positionality matters in qualitative research, and it begins shaping the study at the point of writing the question itself. Because qualitative inquiry is interpretive, you are part of the meaning-making, not outside of it. Your identity, experiences, assumptions, and relationship to the context influence how you frame the question, how you enter the field, how data is interpreted, and how meaning is co-constructed with participants. A qualitative research question must reflect the humility that comes with acknowledging that you are not a neutral instrument. You are a human being studying human experience, and your presence has an influence that must be respected. A qualitative research question must also be bounded. It cannot be so broad that the study becomes impossible to complete within the scope of a study. Questions like, what are the experiences of teachers? Or how do students make meaning of trauma? Are too vast. The question must be anchored in the specific phenomenon, tension, and gap you identified earlier. Boundaries keep the study workable and focused while still honoring the depth qualitative inquiry requires. A question must be broad enough to guide the study, yet bounded by the phenomenon and gap, so the project remains feasible within the timeframe and scope of a study. Each question must fully align with the qualitative design, signal the type of meaning the study will uncover, and match the purpose statement exactly in orientation and intent. If your design is narrative, the research question must center on the stories people tell, and the meaning they construct across time. Narrative inquiry is chosen when the gap involves understanding a journey, identity, or turning point that unfolds through story. Imagine a phenomenon where adult learners return to college after many years away. The tension is that institutions develop support models without understanding how these adults make sense of reentry. The consequence is that policies and supports may not reflect the lived realities of adult learners. The gap is that the field does not yet understand the story of returning to college from the perspective of adults themselves. The methodology becomes qualitative, the design becomes narrative, and the purpose might say, the purpose of this narrative study is to explore the stories adult learners tell about returning to college after extended time away. The research question becomes, how do adult learners narrate their experiences of returning to college after extended time away? The verb narrate, describe, or construct meaning from must appear in the question because the analysis must answer that exact prompt and involve the participant telling their story. If your design is phenomenology, the research question must center on the lived experience of a phenomenon. Phenomenology is chosen when the gap is about what it is like to experience something from the inside. Imagine a phenomenon where teachers report emotional exhaustion after a policy shift. The tension is that leaders are designing supports without knowing what burnout feels like to the people experiencing it. The consequence is that these responses may miss the core experience. The gap is that the field does not yet understand the lived experience of teacher burnout under policy disruption. The methodology becomes qualitative, the design becomes phenomenology, and the purpose might say, the purpose of this phenomenological study is to explore the lived experiences of teachers navigating emotional burnout after a district-wide policy shift. The research question becomes, what are the lived experiences of teachers navigating emotional burnout after a district-wide policy shift? The phrase lived experiences must appear because phenomenological analysis will address that precise question. If your design is grounded theory, the research question must focus on a process, action, or interaction that is not yet understood. Grounded theory is chosen when the gap is about how something unfolds, or how people move through a sequence of steps. It is important to remember that grounded theory is a long-term commitment, and is often pursued post-degree. Imagine a phenomenon where teachers are rapidly adopting AI writing tools. The tension is that leaders do not understand the process teachers follow as they adapt these tools. The consequence is that professional development efforts may not match the stages teachers actually go through. The gap is that the field does not yet understand the process by which teachers adopt and adapt AI writing tools. The methodology becomes qualitative, the design becomes grounded theory, and the purpose might say, the purpose of this grounded theory study is to develop a theory of how teachers adopt and adapt AI writing tools in secondary classrooms. The research question becomes, what process do teachers follow as they adopt and adapt AI writing tools in secondary classrooms? The focus on process signals grounded theory's analytic aim, even though grounded theory is rarely used at the dissertation level due to its iterative and intensive requirements. If your design is ethnography, the research question must explore culture, shared beliefs, rituals, routines, or norms that shape group life. Ethnography is chosen when the gap concerns collective meaning rather than individual experience alone. Imagine a phenomenon where an instructional leadership team is struggling to implement a district initiative. The tension is that the district sees the issue as procedural, while the team experiences it as cultural. The consequence is that the district may misdiagnose the problem. The gap is that the field does not yet understand the culture of this leadership team as it navigates change. The methodology becomes qualitative, the design becomes ethnography, and the purpose might say, the purpose of this ethnographic study is to understand the culture of an instructional leadership team implementing a district-wide initiative. The research question becomes, how does the instructional leadership team construct and enact its culture while implementing the district-wide initiative? The focus on culture signals the ethnographic commitment to meaning within a shared group. If your design is case study, the research question must focus on a bounded system, a program, school, team, initiative, event, or other contained case. Case study is chosen when the phenomenon cannot be separated from its context. Imagine a district implementing competency-based learning. The tension is that stakeholders at higher levels do not understand how the model actually functions on the ground. The consequence is that decisions about scaling or adjusting the model may be uninformed. The gap is that the field does not yet understand how this specific case operates. The methodology becomes qualitative, the design becomes case study, and the purpose might say, the purpose of this case study is to explore how one district implements competency-based learning in its middle schools. The research question becomes, how does one district implement competency-based learning in its middle schools? The bounded focus signals case study. A qualitative research question determines the kinds of data you must collect, because each design requires evidence that matches the type of meaning the question is asking for. A narrative question requires stories and timelines. A phenomenological question requires interviews that capture the essence of experience, and may be supported by written reflections. A grounded theory question requires data that reveals stages, steps, or processes, and will involve memoing throughout. An ethnographic question requires prolonged engagement, observations, field notes, and artifacts. A case study question requires triangulation through interviews, observations, and documents. A qualitative research question is not creative writing. It is alignment. It is the final expression of the logic you have been building since the first moment you identified your phenomenon. When the research question is aligned with the methodology, design, purpose, and gap, the next steps, data collection, fieldwork, coding, interpretation, and meaning-making, become far clearer because the question tells you exactly what kind of human experience your study is designed to understand at depth.